The first one we're going to do today is a sky with a headland and a beach. A lot of people want to paint that type of scene, and I'm going to show you how you can do that quite simply. So we've got a blank sheet, so that's where we always start, and I'm not going to do any drawing. We're just going to use the paints and get the feel of using watercolour as the medium and learn how to use it to create a nice simple image, and you'll be hopefully happy with that and get some results. So I use 3 brushes, and basically I've got a dagger brush, which is a chiseled edge. I've got a nice detail brush, and I've got a flat. And these are actually very useful just for washes and for detail. We're going to do this in 15 minutes, so it'll be nice and quick. But the idea is that you get the feel of the paints and will build up confidence with your painting. So first of all, I'm going to pick up some blue from my palette, and we'll actually just load the brush. Obviously for the sky, I'm going to use the whole of the sheet. I'm not masking. Sometimes I mask off and it helps sometimes for borders and things, but we'll keep it simple and fill the whole page today. So it's a rectangle and it's A4 format, and it will give you the chance to get a nice landscape shape. So initially I've loaded the brush and I'm just putting what I call a glaze. And a glaze is just a simple light wash of watercolour on your brush, and you apply to the paper with your water. Keep loading up your brush, be generous, and you can then keep coming down the page until we come to the horizon. And with these, we call them glazes because we can add layer after layer. When they dry, we can add additional layers. And the beauty with watercolour is it blends, and it can even graduate as well. So again, I'm taking an ultramarine blue. I'll just call the colours very simply blues, reds, greens, to keep it simple rather than use all the technical words today. So once you've laid a very simple glaze, you can then actually just let that dry. Have a bit of tissue and you can dry out your brush, because you will leave residue paint if you're not too careful, and then you might get a mix of colours that you don't want. Take a clean brush, the dagger, and we'll now look at the beach area, which is coming down from left to right. And I'm going to use what's called yellow tan colour, which is nice for a beach. And I'll just do a diagonal stripe coming down. Again, just applying the paint onto the paper. Use plenty of water because it means you can graduate the wash and thin it, because obviously the paint gets lifted from the brush onto your paper. People use the water get too liberal with it sometimes, and it can be too much water, or the opposite, where you don't use enough water. So always go back, pick up a bit of water, and if you have too much water, you can actually blot with a bit of tissue. Have a bit of tissue, and that allows you you can actually draw back paint that you've laid on before it dries. Now in a warm room, these glazes will dry pretty quickly. The top one we've laid on has already started to dry. One of the beauties of this is that when it's dry, we can lay another glaze on top, and we'll do that shortly. Don't try and put darker colours in yet, because what will happen is the colours will bleed, and it'll mean that you'll get a lot of distortion, and we want to control the paints, not the other way around. So we've just laid a couple of washes at the moment, just to help establish the composition. I'm going to now sort of look at the water area, which is, being west coast of Scotland, it's a turquoise blue. So to get that colour, I've got a wee mixing plate here, and it's white, which means it's quite nice because it's the same as the paper, and you can lift your colour from your tray, put it on the plate, saucer, whatever you have, and you can then wash the brush and take one of your blues. I'm going to take a little bit, not too much, just drop it in, and then we get a turquoise blue. You'll see it change on the plate here, and I'm now going to drop that in where the beach area is to make another glaze, very lightly, and I'm going to stop short of the beach because that's the transition between the water and the beach, and then we can use that as where the water's breaking onto the beach quite lightly. Again, lift. These are very pale just now, but we can intensify them once we've laid the basic composition. So it's very, very, very light at the moment, okay? So the top area, just check in a dry room, it will dry quite quickly. That's beginning to dry. So I'm going to lift a stronger blue and take it up into the corners and put another glaze on top. But this time, you see the brush dries out quite quickly. But move the brush and you can effectively shape the tops of clouds in the lighter areas of the paper. And you can move that around before it dries and form the tops of some of the clouds. Quite simply. And it comes with practice. And these are simple techniques that you can use, and it gives you a nice image quite quickly. Okay, so we're starting to establish the sky with a bit of cloud in it now, just as simple as that. I'm going to intensify that sky even more. While it's drying, we can drop another glaze in, and that will actually start to frame the tops of the clouds even more. Now, lower down where the glaze of the original glaze is lighter, we can actually put some clouds in profile near the horizon, and because of the perspective, they become much smaller in the sky. The relative scale, because they're way in the distance, they could be 40, 50 miles away. So they're coming down towards where the horizon is, which is the junction between sky and the water. But you can just see it build up very slowly with now, and you can still go back up into other parts of the sky and move some of the blues that we've laid down and reposition and maybe just blend them into the lighter areas. Now, the headland next. I'm going to use the detail brush for this because it's a bit more detailed. Now, your headland, I'm not basing it on a particular spot on the island, but I'm just going to take a dark brown from a tray and I'm just going to run it along the horizon, but of course vary the height, and depending how far these hills are from your viewpoint, they'll either be taller or smaller for the distance again. Load your brush up. Again, this is like another wash in miniature over the one we've laid. Okay. And I'm going to take a very dark blue, it's nearly black, and we're going to just, what I call grounding, it's called grounding when you ground the horizon and the rocks just where they are in front of you, where there's pockets of light not reaching. And when it's wet, it'll bleed a little bit, but that's quite nice because it gives an impressionistic effect, which everybody wants to achieve, and most people find that quite difficult. So already we've created the scale. They're quite far away, and we can have a little outcrop closer to us over the water because it's dried, and that gives us another, because they're in relief, they're not silhouetted completely, but they're actually, that's why we can see pockets of light and dark, because basically we're actually producing light, dark and mid areas to define the whole painting, and it gives it the balance. Now, while we've got that little bit of paint left in the brush, we can now take it. I'm just going to define that horizon, because on the horizon quite often it's a little bit darker than the rest of the water, marginally, in the distance. And then we can indicate some lines of the breaking waves just gently reaching the shore. And this is the paint that's left, and of course the paler they get, the less intense, but of course closer to us, it's quite nice because they're not too well defined. Okay. And then on the beach you might have some little bits of seaweed. We could take some green, just lift some green from the palette. Sometimes if you pinch the brush you can get a sharper edge, and we can just put wee scrapings of seaweed that might have just reached the shore. Take another green just to, very simply. Now, while we've got one colour, sometimes it's nice to take it elsewhere. And on the west coast of Scotland, you get quite turquoise greenery in the colour of the water. So I'm just going to emphasise that a little bit just by, again, going over that original wash we put. And it just gives it a tint. A glaze is like a tint, like a filter. We're filtering the paper, which is our light source. again, quickly we'll just take another, a different blue this time, just to mix in, because again, when it's drying, we can mix the green and the blue to give that nice turquoise effect. A wee bit more, and it will dry very quickly, and we've got that nice sort of west coast. Now, I've left the sort of bottom left corner quite pale, but a lot of the Scottish beaches are quite white, sandy beaches, so that can be enough. So we don't want to worry too much about that. So just to finish off, I'm taking this is a stronger blue. You get used to all the blues depending on your paints that you have, but be creative and experiment with it, and you can add other bands of, because the water's not one colour, it changes because of the sand and the rocks and the light defining them. And I'm just going back up to that headland, and I'm going to put a light, just lift a bit of the dark blue and put a paler distant band, because to give it a bit of perspective, mountains that are further away are paler because the light source is much further away from our eye, and it just gives a sense of the darker rocks are closer to you and the paler ones are further away. So that's a useful tip. And if you do that, it helps your viewer translate the picture. I've now got this little bit purple, just artistic license to pull the thing together, and a wee bit in the rocks in the foreground, and then I am going to stop there. And basically we've got a little landscape with the beach, white sands, an indication of some breaking waves, very gentle, puffy clouds in the sky, and that's quite easy to create, hopefully. Till next time, we'll do another project, and you can join me on that, and we'll explore another landscape and help you do that with confidence.